Okay, now we're going to get into the heart of Cale's research, soil amendments. So this is going to be a little bit shorter section, but it should also give you some more options when choosing the soil that you want to use for your mini golf course. So, amending putting greens, sands. So why would we want to amend a putting green sand? What would be some of the reasons? So I want you to think about that. By adding something, anything, you can drive the cation exchange capacity up or down. You can drive the moisture holding capacity up and down, which in turn drives drainage up and down, which in turn drives compactability up and down. So there's a lot of different things out there that people are going to sell you. It's the latest and greatest amendment for putting greens. Some are more expensive than others. Some are simple, some are free. Might be rice hulls, might be, I've seen sawdust used, I've seen all kinds of different things, but we're going to go into a few that Cale looked at in his research. To produce a medium that has better physical properties than the sand alone or the native soil. So you might want to take a native soil and add something to it, or you might want to take sand and modify it. So when you're selecting amendment, you want to consider its effect on the soil texture and structure. So will it move the soil, say, from a sandy clay loam to a clay? Will it move it from a sand to a sandy clay loam? What will it do to the soil chemistry? And that's pretty much the pH and the cation exchange capacity. Will it break down? If you put something like sawdust in there, it will be gone in a few months or even a few days. What does that become? What affects it? How does it affect the microbial population? So there's a lot of questions that are not answered about a lot of amendments. How much is required to achieve your result? If you're going to try to add sand to a putting green and make it act like a sand, remember you're going to have to add 90%, which you're better off just starting over in that case. And then how much is it going to cost? Is it available? You know, if you're at a processing plant for sand and you have a huge amount of it, then that's not a problem. But if you have to truck sand from the other side of the country, that's going to definitely affect the cost, particularly as trucking costs increase and surcharges for gasoline and things like that. So lots of stuff that we talked about in our labs and some of the discussions in our seminar class. So, types of amendments. There's really two major types of amendments we're going to talk about here. First is an organic amendment. That would be peat moss, reed sedge, or any other type of peat moss. Some sort of compost. Turf grass clipping compost is, in my opinion, an excellent amendment. It puts there the bacteria, the microbes that are needed for decomposing dead and dying turf plants. It's readily available. Rice hulls have been used, sawdust, lots of different organic amendments. These are all going to be affected by microbes, and these are all going to increase or decrease depending on the conditions. Inorganic materials are more like soil. A calcited clay, a fired clay, an extruded shale, diatomaceous earth, sand, porous ceramic, and zeolite are all products that are sold in the turfgrass industry as soil amendments. Here's a close-up electron microscope of diatomaceous earth. You can see that here's some bigger particles, but this is diatomaceous. It's holy. So it's got these holes, and inside these holes we have all kinds of pore space. Pore space for air, water, oxygen, and also surface. On the inside of all these holes is surface area. So surface area for nutrient holding capacity. So by adding this product to a sand, you are able to increase cation exchange capacity in a lot of ways. So this would be something like Profile. And this is why they say that this product is not going to break down, because it's fired in a kiln. The structure is changed by that heating process. And here's a cool slide that Cale did. This was in the USGA magazine a few years back, but it's got a lot of different soil amendments from wash sand here. The Profile, this would be your diatomaceous earth. Zeolite is another diatomaceous earth, maybe not fired as much. These guys will fight, but it's still a similar product. Esolite, Ecolite, Turface, Sand Aid, masonry sand, peat moss. Green's Choice is another product that's sold in the industry, and I'm not sure what PSA is. It might have been a test thing that he had. So lots of different stuff that he put, did a similar experiment to the experiment that we showed before to show moisture holding retentivity changes and cation exchange capacity changes, and we're going to have a slide that will summarize that here in a second. So this is kind of important. So take some time, look at this, and go back and forth between this and this next slide. So this is the properties. So we've got sand in our first column, Ecolite, Green's Choice, Eusolite, Profile, and Sphagnum peat. And what happens with these? So weather retention. Sand pretty much is the same. Water retention. I was wondering why that's not whether it sticks around. So they're saying that Profile adds some water retention. So adding CEC and adding water retention. So Sphagnum peat would be the best, clogs those pores the most, but Eusolite and Profile add a little bit more than Ecolite and Green's Choice. Does it make more available water? A little bit, some, a little, and a lot. The size of sand is variable. The size of Ecolite is variable. Green's Choice is coarse material. Eusolite is a coarse material. Profile is a more medium coarse material. So that's probably why Profile has gained a foothold, even though it's more expensive than many of the other products. And then Sphagnum peat is fibrous. Nutrient retention, sand's not going to retain any nutrients. Ecolite maintains ammonium very well, so it's a nitrogen holding product. A little bit for Green's Choice, a little bit for Eusolite. Cale showed that Profile does hold ammonium also, and then Sphagnum peat is going to hold those things. Then another column, if we were to add one, we would add stability. So stability of sand is going to be high. Stability of Ecolite, we don't know. Green's Choice, not sure. Eusolite, we're not sure. Profile, they say it's pretty high. And then for peat moss, will be very low. That's not going to hang around in the profile. So important to think about these amendments and the different ways of looking at them and the results that you want from them. So I would say amendments are probably a good thing for you to try in your putting green construction. So summary of our amendments: have a putting green material laboratory tested, see what it's going to do. We can't test over time, but we can get the results. We can make our own mix. We can see what the perk, how is your mix going to change your perk rate. That's really important numbers, even though we might discount perk rate. How will adding Profile to sand change the perk rate of the sand? We can do that. How will adding peat moss to sand change the perk rate of the sand? What are your course conditions going to be? Are you going to have high traffic? Are you going to have excessive rainfall? Is irrigation going to be a problem or easy? How much shade? What's more important, nutrient holding capacity or drainage? You need to make that decision. You need to make that decision for your micro golf course also. And then back to our first picture. This is a picture of Pine Needles, and this is before it was reconstructed. So U.S. Open at Pine Needles was played on greens that were not USJ greens. And in fact, the very first U.S. Open played on USJ greens was in 1999, the U.S. Open at Pinehurst No. 2, after those greens were redone. So a lot of the old courses have push-up greens or modified push-up greens. So you can't assume just because a golf course is great that it has a certain type of greens. And other USJ greens have failed because of triangular-shaped particles, greens mix that was contaminated with herbicides. So you got to be careful. Buyer beware on all this stuff. You can spend a lot of money to get a little bit of gain if you're not careful. So hopefully, good luck with your greens. You should be getting going on that as soon as possible. And if you have any questions, make sure you email, call, or stop by my office hours.